Right now, South African parastatals are in a state of deterioration, and the knock-on effect on the economy is devastating. Now, former CEOs are being blamed, but does the buck stop there? The State Capture report found the Standing Committee on Public Accounts did not properly exercise its oversight role. Let's speak now to the former SCOPA chair, Themba Godi, who joins us now live for a response, I guess, to this. Mr. Godi, thank you very much for your time here on eNCA. You know, Justice Raymond Zondo, Chief Justice Raymond Zondo, in his report said that Parliament didn't, practice its oversight role. He said SCOPA also had, it was partly to blame for what we saw at Eskom as well as PRASA. You were chairperson at some point of SCOPA, which had that oversight role. What's your response to this? He said this even publicly at an event last year rather.
Well, I think that indeed Parliament has not exercised its responsibilities to the nation to the fullest extent that would have prevented some of the challenges that we're having. You'll recall that I appeared before the Zondo Commission where I gave my perspective on what I saw and what I thought were some of the limitations that militated against, for example, the work of SCOPA per se. SCOPA is a committee of Parliament. Whatever work it does, it reports to Parliament. And once it has reported, it is the Speaker's office that then takes it up with Cabinet. If that part is not functioning optimally, whatever the committees do in Parliament will amount to zero.
So basically, there's then a lack of political will from all those political leaders of different political parties to act when SCOPA gives them reports.
Well, I said in my presentation at Zondo that, oversight in Parliament is a political function. It's not an administrative function, meaning political considerations always come to the fore. As SCOPA, I wrote to the Speaker's office requesting that they should create a mechanism in the Speaker's office to track the resolutions of the committee. These were promised, it was never done. And I raised it at Zondo. And I remember he raised it with one of the officials from Parliament on why this has not been done. It has not been done, and I think even now it is not there. So what that means is that whatever decisions Parliament take, there is no follow-up mechanism to ensure that there is implementation. And so that's why you see the deterioration of our parastatals, whether you're talking Eskom or Transnet or the Post Office or Dinel. SAA is almost not there. It's not as if we don't get annual reports from departments and from the Auditor General. We get those things. And I would say that as far as SCOPA is concerned, we tried the best we could under the circumstances. But at the end of the day, we report to the Speaker's office. And if that office does not do anything with our reports, they will just gather dust.
So what do you think, what would be your analysis of what the problem was then, in terms of the Speaker's office? If they have that role, why did they not investigate or at least implement recommendations that you made?
Well, like you said at the beginning, it's all a question of political will. If there's no political will, because remember, the people who are in Parliament are junior members to those who are in Cabinet. You saw in Parliament recently when the majority rejected the panel report on Palapala. Members streamed out of Parliament singing Rimurata Kaofela. And yet it is the responsibility of Parliament to ask questions and to seek accountability. So when those things are not done, then at the end of the day, the results are as we see them. It's shocking for me. Transnet used to be the best performing SOE in government. But to see the state at which it is right now, it's really heartbreaking to say the least.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you talk about that and how, people in Parliament or Parliament members get a mandate from their political parties, we saw that happen. And then it's all a numbers game, etc. And South Africans basically don't really get answers to the questions that they are hoping to get answers to. So what would be the way forward? I mean, CEOs have resigned. They've been fired. We have a new CEO, or rather the current CEO that is serving notice. By March, he should be out and be getting a new one. Is that really the solution? The president also signing off a proclamation to have the SANDF go out to strategic ESCOM power stations, but that doesn't seem to be working because apparently there's so much sabotage. What is the solution then, as we sit here as South Africans wondering why it's getting worse and not better?
Very good question. I think our major problem is that government, the majority party, I don't think that they have a proper grasp on the situation or have a proper sense of what needs to be done. When I was still chairing SCOPA, I always wondered, listening to officials, whether do these people have a full appreciation of the responsibilities before them. And I think that lack of leadership, that lack of foresight and direction is what is leading the country into a cul-de-sac. There is, as things stand, it looks like people who are running, whether it's departments or it is the state, seem to have run out of ideas. And I think what we need as a country is the ability of the citizenry to, to raise their awareness, to raise their consciousness, to raise their voices. That is what is going to move leaders. I think we can see now the president has not gone to Davos in Switzerland because of the pressures that are coming from the population on the ESCOM issue. How do we sit here and we're told you are on stage 6 indefinitely? And it's almost like it must become normalized. You have no trains moving that should ferry people who are going to work. And it's almost like nothing has happened. So unless you have an active citizenry, things will just decay, as we have seen them deteriorating over the years.
Well, people are trying to mobilize themselves. Some people are saying maybe South Africans should march to Parliament on the 9th of February, when we expect to hear the State of the Nation address, etc. Do you think maybe that's a good start?
Well, the good start is this discussion we're having, because there are hundreds of thousands who are watching us. And the most important thing is to make people aware. Once people are aware, then you can organize your marches, whether you go to Megawatt Park, whether you march here in Bushbuckridge or you march to Parliament, as long as public awareness is raised. And when we say march, we're not saying destroy public property. We're not saying be vulgar. We're not saying be riotous, because those are two separate things that take the focus away from the issues. The most important thing is the public raising of a citizen's concerns. I think the kind of coverage that the media is giving to some of these challenges are assisting to raise the awareness of the people and putting pressure on leadership to find solutions. Because if they are not pressured, decay sets in, and as we see, there is no accountability. Why in 2018 ESCOM had an investment of $10 billion from the Saudis, and a few days later they had a loan of $33 billion from the Chinese, but we see no improvement in the operations of ESCOM. If anything, it's going from bad to worse.
Yeah, it makes no sense at all. And I couldn't have said it better myself, Mr. Godi. But also to go back to you saying that your hands basically were tied, or you were stuck between a rock and a hard place, because every time you went to the Speaker's office, your report would sit there and gather dust, basically, and nothing would really be done. Now, the danger is that for us as citizens, when we look at SCOPA, we start thinking, well, it doesn't have any powers.
Well, look, and I appreciate the frustration of the public. I've met many people on social media personally who would, argue that why haven't people been arrested? Why have people not been sent to prison? I appreciate that as frustration. But the reality is, committees of parliament can do no more than what the Constitution empowers them to do. It does not include the powers to investigate, to arrest, to charge, to prosecute. Those require other arms of the state to function. You'll recall that as SCOPA, we actually ended up calling the Hawks to attend all our meetings. And we shared with them all the documents from the Auditor General on the irregular expenditure, on the fruitless and wasteful expenditure, and everything as an attempt to say, you law enforcement, look at what we're dealing with and see what you can do with it. When before Sean Abrams left as the head of prosecution, we were negotiating with him to ensure that there is a prosecutor who attends SCOPA meetings, because in terms of the law, the prosecutors can initiate charges. So he had agreed in principle that he will second someone to attend our hearings so that they could take up matters for investigation and prosecution. But those things never came, to fruition. And I'm just thinking, well, maybe those who are now at SCOPA, they will look into those kind of things, because to just sit, have hearings, write reports, and nothing happens, it's not oversight. You're just going through the motions for no purpose.